Hello, bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. If you want to hear the prose, stay here. If you want to hear me rant, go there. This book took me on a roller coaster, and there's no way for me to talk about it without giving you spoilers because it hinges on a twist in the beginning, but the twist at the end feels like something that I saw, but nobody else, as far as I can tell, is seeing, and it's kind of messing me up a little bit. This is Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. We read this as the March pick for the Interstellar Book Club, which is the Sci-Fi book club that I run.
It could change the world.
There is another full-length review for this, but it's not on my channel, so if you'd like to hear me and my co-host talk about it, I will link that video below. But here are my thoughts, okay? And I'm recording this before the live show, so my thoughts might change after talking to all my friends. There was a point where I was ready to give this book 5 stars. And then a paragraph or two completely changed that. You ever read a book and 80 to 85% through, you're like, this is incredible, amazing, groundbreaking, it deserves an award, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to a point of no return where a character says something and you're just left wondering, why was this decision made? They didn't have to say that. This didn't have to be a thing that we talk about. And then you go to reviews on Goodreads or whatever reading app you use, Storygraph, whatever, and nobody else is talking about the thing that's bothering you. That's me with this. Because I've seen a lot of reviews on Goodreads of people being like, this is great, 5 stars. And I'm like, yes, but and. Yes, but and. Terra Nullius is a story that is a metaphor for the colonization of Australia. It is on the back cover. That is not a giveaway. The first 10 chapters felt like a historical fiction. However, this is a sci-fi. So in the beginning, I was like, when are we going to get to the sci-fi? Was I like misguided? Is this not a sci-fi? It really is just reading like a historical fiction. We have different POVs in different sections, all within the same chapter, so it just kind of skips to different POVs around. Some are from the settlers, which could be compared to the British and the white people who came and colonized Australia. And then we have the natives, which are being forced into residential schools, which are being forced into slavery, very similarly to the native Aboriginal people of Australia, right? So the entire book is written with the terminology of these people are settlers, these people are natives, these people are being called savages, these people are considering themselves educated and cultured. There is a little bit about these people which some settlers are starting to think, maybe they are intelligent because they have this part of culture which is interesting to us, and so maybe they should have rights, but like it's inconvenient for us, so we don't want to abolish slavery, but we'll do it on record just because it's starting to become an issue. Like slavery is starting to become abolished in other places, but this is a colony, it's pretty far away. How do we get people to actually follow it? People are saying that slavery is abolished, but clearly these people are slaves. So like what's going on? And we get POVs from the settlers and we get POVs from the natives. Let me tell you some positives before I go on my rant, okay? Our reluctant hero, who I really loved, their name was Jackie. Jackie, I think, ran away from slavery. We don't necessarily find out like how they ran away or what they were running away from. We just know that they ran away from an enslaved situation, went back to their residential school. And Jackie is just trying to survive. They're a normal person, a normal young boy who is hungry and thirsty the only way that they can get water and food is by sneaking into settler camps or sneaking into places that are really dangerous and finding food and water. But they keep messing up every time because they're not a thief. They're just a person. They're just a normal person. I would be a klutz too. I would trip over a pan and make a ruckus and probably get myself caught. I would see a random sack of flour like Jackie did and think, oh, I could use this for food. But then later on when they're in the desert, realize that they don't have anything or water to mix with this flour to make a dough, to cook it somewhere because they can't make a fire. Like, they don't know how to make a fire. Like, it's that kind of stuff, right? So it's heartbreaking to see what Jackie goes through. And I was on the edge of my seat hoping that they make it out alive. So Jackie becomes a reluctant hero because as they're surviving, just going into different places and trying to make it to safety, they're gaining a reputation as that one outlaw, that one native, that savage that is just like stealing and causing all these problems, and their stories being blown out of proportion. And so now like everyone's on the hunt for this really dangerous native, but Jackie's just a kid. Jackie's narrative I loved. Ultimately, they became a martyr, and that was when they made the hardest choice. And I loved Jackie for that. I loved Jackie's story. I loved their persistence. And they come across Johnny Starr, who was an outlaw settler, who was a native sympathizer, and was like, listen, he's like, I don't want to be here. I want to go back to my home planet. But at the same time, this human showed me sympathy. Also, I'm not a good person because I grew up in a culture that was oppressive, and so I was raised thinking that these people were lesser than. I've committed horrific acts, and now I'm seeing that I'm here and I'm getting to know them, that they are an intelligent life form, and who am I to freaking judge? So he's like kind of trying to repent, but not really. He's just like situationally repenting and just trying to survive. So I love Johnny Starr for character growth. I love Jackie character growth and like arc. The villains are super villains. We have the head sister of the residential school who's just this evil person, and we have this guy named the Devil, which according to the end notes was based on a real person who was a bureaucrat who was in charge of making decisions around the free native people. Like, what land can they own? Can they get married? Can they do this business proposition? And he was very openly known for being an asshole, for signing no and declining all their requests just because he hated them. So he gained this reputation for being called the Devil. That is apparently based on a true story. So the villains in here are, again, like one-to-one metaphors for people that actually did this shit. And sometimes that's a good thing. A book that is a direct one-to-one saying, like, this is some fucked up shit that happened. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to, like, change it too much. I'm literally going to take these things that happened and show you how they happened by pulling you into either a sci-fi or a fantasy or whatever story that seems like it's something else. But eventually the veil is going to be uncovered and you're going to see that, look, you got to see that this fucked up shit happens, right? That part is not an issue for me. I loved it. I'm struggling to find the words, so I'm just going to say it. So Australia, I've never been to Australia. I know a couple people from Australia. I know people who've moved to Australia. I know about Australian history, not as in depth as I would like to, but I know about it, right? So when we were introduced to the natives, I was under the hope that there would be characters who were not just white Australians. That we would get conversation with different characters who were native Australian. There were characters who were called trackers, and these trackers were hired by the settlers to hunt runaway natives. So I'm like, this is a great setup. This could be something where we have native Australians becoming the necessity for humanity to survive, because what it turns out at the plot twist of this is that the natives here are the humans. The settlers are aliens. The aliens came from a planet that has higher humidity. They are toad-like, so they need moisture, which is why Australia as a colony for a setting of this book makes a lot of sense. That they are struggling to be able to live on Australian land. Terra Nullius translating to land belonging to no one and no man's land, which is exactly the terminology that the British and colonizers used to justify the takeover of Australia and other places, as far as I know. And so these settlers have deemed Australia Terra Nullius. Because of that, they don't see the natives, the humans, as people. They see them as somewhat more intelligent but not sentient animals that can be trained to do things in the dry climate and desert of the Australian outback that the aliens themselves can't do because of the nature of their being. Perfect setup for us to have characters from the human side that are native Australians, that are Aboriginal people, so we can have a conversation about how these people were forced into residential schools and reservations and like forced off of their land, but are now essential to ensuring that humanity has the means to be able to exist and kind of like survive the alien onslaught. It was the perfect setup. And what got me here, what made me do a double take about 10 times, was when one of our main characters says, "My skin would be that which would have been considered before the invasion white." And so since she is related to many of the other characters, like the grandfather and other people in the village, and we have other characters, we can, with that information, come to a fair, I think, assumption that most of these characters are white. And the way that they talk about the Aboriginal people of Australia is that they're out there somewhere, that they are being looked for by this group of people who have been pushed into the desert from Australian cities to now survive in this climate away from the aliens, is that they were city dwellers at one point, or just like non-desert dwellers, and that they're looking for the native Australians to hopefully learn from them and be taken in, and so humanity can have another chance. But why don't we see them? Why don't we talk to them? Why don't we have main characters who, even if they're not directly like someone who grew up with a tribe or grew up on a reservation, or like, you know, they could just be people who have native heritage and ethnicity that could talk to these white people and call them out on their BS. Where are they? Why aren't they a main character? So that really struck to me, because I'm like, the author is an Indigenous author. Why did you write about white people? I'm very confused. So my thinking was like, okay, this is a one-for-one metaphor for the colonization. And so it's like putting the people who now, I guess, benefited from this colonization and flipping the script on it, which I think opened up so many doors for nuance. There was also a conversation, particularly with, I forget who, I don't know if it was the grandpa or someone else, but they were basically saying that racism was eradicated. along with humanity, because when the invasion happens, everybody has to pool their resources together. And I'm like, honey, that's what people of color do already. Like, no, that is not, that is not how this works. Racism is still present, even in times of a major crisis. Cough, cough, what we went through like 3-4 years ago. Because when people of color go through a time of crisis, at least like in my community, this is what happened, right? I can only speak from what my family did and what people in my community did. But like everyone's family gets together, we pool our resources. We're like, listen, bring the kids over, bring auntie over, bring abuela over, bring whoever. Like, we get together, we stick together, we pool our resources. Like, that's just what we do. And just because we're together doesn't mean that racism isn't present, you know, especially when it comes to the divvying of resources, when it comes to who gets what power, who gets to say what in this new council, who gets listened to. Like, this could have been the perfect setup for different people of different ethnicities to be like, okay, who has power now? Who's making the decisions? Who's calling the shots? And how is that still an extension of racism that was a problem before the invasion happened? And it wasn't. It was just, it was weird. It was, living in an oppressed community, you see that racism present. And like, how does the government ration resources? How do people price gouge, right? How did the news outlets, which are present here, frame the narrative of robbery and theft and use of resources between more affluent white communities and communities of color? Like, that could have been here, and it wasn't. Like, I don't think I'm asking for this book to do too much, because again, I think it was the perfect setup to do so. But if you want to hear more of my thoughts, or if you want to talk about this, drop something in the comment. If you've read this, tell me what you thought about it. And then people who didn't like it, but I think from what I saw so far, the reasons that they didn't like it are not the same reasons that I didn't like it. So if you've read this and anything that I said to you makes sense, please drop it in the comments below, because I'd love to talk about it. I would still recommend this book to people, but I would recommend it to different people for different reasons. That's my thoughts on Terra Nullius. I post videos whenever I feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye.
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka worked the factory.
And you're one